Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny Programme Committee. Item 1 is apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Sarah Keaton and Beth Allender. Any other apologies at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. Just to note that Councillor Lyndon Jones has also sent apologies. He has a clash of meetings, but he will try and join us for the Scrutiny Working Group on bus services item, because obviously he chaired the original working group on that. For the benefits of those who joined us online, I'm going to ask people in the Gloucester room to introduce themselves so that people know who's in the room. So I'm Peter Black, I'm the chair. I'm going to go to my left next.
Good afternoon. I'm Ridge Madaha from the Council's Scrutiny team.
Simon Jones, Corporate Strategic Delivery Unit.
Louise Gibbard, Cabinet Member for Care Services.
Councillor Terry Hennigan, representing Penderry.
Mark Wade, Director of Place.
Hello, Jane Whitmore, Strategic Lead for Commissioning Social Services.
And Julie Gosney, Partnership and Involvement Team Manager under Jane Whitmore.
Hayley Gwillam, Cabinet Member for Community Support.
Dave House, Director of Social Services.
Debbie Smith, Legal Advisor.
Good afternoon, Samantha Woon, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you for that. Excellent. Item 2 then is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Does anybody have any declarations they wish to make? Any councillors or officers? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 3 is prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. So that takes us on to item 4, which is the minutes of the last meeting. So to approve as a correct record, and they're on page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5. Are we happy that those are correct record?
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to say I'd take silence as assent, but thank you very much for that. Okay, so public question time. And we have no questions received. So I'm going to move on to item 6, which is the Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Inquiry Panel. This was established to look at in-depth antisocial behaviour, basically asking the question, how can the council ensure it is working with its partners to appropriately and effectively tackle antisocial behaviour in Swansea? Councillor Terry Hennigan was convened it, and this effectively is the final report containing its key findings, conclusions and recommendations, which will then go on to Cabinet if people are happy for that to do so. I have to say it's a very impressive report, Terry. Do you want to do an introduction to it?
Okay, well, I'm here today obviously to present the final report on antisocial behaviour inquiry panel. Give the findings, conclusions, recommendations and the examination, the subject of evidence we gathered. I want to thank all those people who took the time to attend meetings, whether it was down here or online. Very impressed with the fact that it was cross-party councillors, attended. We were impressed with the commitment of all organisations and individuals that took part in the inquiry. We're particularly pleased to go and meet with a group of young people that was in Bryn Hyfryd, who told us and gave us a huge perspective. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it was probably the best meeting I attended. I did try in the early days to try to get more meetings outside this building, because I found that in the past when we went into communities and community centres, leisure centres, that we did get a lot of more information. We heard about the many challenges that face the council and its partners tackling antisocial behaviour, how the issue is multi-layered and required input, commitment across the selection of organisations, not just outside partners. Our key recommendations from the inquiry was to conduct a mapping exercise of council services, but also those organisations that have a stake in improving antisocial behaviour. We hope that this inquiry has helped to highlight the complexity and importance of the issue associated with antisocial behaviour with a wider audience. Our report contains a number of recommendations for Cabinet, as the Chairman have already said, and with a wider safer community partnership. We believe we help to tackle to prevent antisocial behaviour throughout Swansea. The committee is asked to endorse the report and submission to Cabinet. But before I finish on that part, could I say that I'd like to thank Michelle and the scrutiny department. Very, very helpful all the way through. It's taken a long time. There's a lot of work, and I would like that minute that we thank them for the amount of work they put in. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Terry. As I said, it's an excellent report, and I note that one of the recommendations is that we should add to our work programme youth provision in Swansea, including the provision and current issues like preventative work funding and difficulty in recruiting youth workers. So I think if everyone's happy with that, we will try and add that to a future programme to have a look at, either this committee or maybe get a one-off working group to have a look at that particular issue, because obviously that's a matter dear to my heart, and I know, you know, the more youth workers we have, the better we can able to deal with that particular issue. Yeah. Has anyone got any questions or comments they want to make on the report at all? Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd certainly like to endorse what you said in the opening remarks, Chair, and commend the committee who carried out this inquiry. It was very, very thorough, very in-depth, and I believe it will certainly add value to our intentions of increasing the support to address the antisocial behaviour in Swansea. And once again, thanks to the convener and the panel members and the officers. As I say, it's very, very thorough report.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Anthony.
Yes, thanks, Chair. As Cabinet member, the ASB sits under, and having been part of the inquiry throughout, just wanted to thank everyone, really, the Chair, officers, all the councillors that were present. You know, there was a lot of work put into this over a long period of time. You know, and you can see by the report, you've said yourself that it's a thorough report. There's a lot of recommendations have come from there, and I think that all organisations were very honest, you know, with when they came to the meetings to say about the difficulties, you know, but also the positives of what was taking place. So I thank everybody that's all for this, and obviously now it comes through the Cabinet, and also as officers we are looking to see what we can do to help work, you know, tighten up with these recommendations, really, and everything. So it's a plus. We're pleased to have it, so thank you very much.
Lovely, glad to hear that. Nobody else has any comments. All I'm asking now is that the committee approves this report, please take into Cabinet, and I understand, Terry, you'll be presenting it to Cabinet on Thursday, I assume.
Could I just add with, I'd like to thank the Cabinet members. A lot of them turned up, not just down here, but when we went outside for meetings as well.
Okay, I think you're going to December's Cabinet meeting with the report. So, but yeah, thank you. Are we happy this report is approved to go forward to Cabinet? Yes, I'm taking silence as assent. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, right, I'm going to move on then to, thank you, Terry. Thank you very much. And thank you, your panel, and all the officers who supported you as well. It's a really good report.
And I just want to say again, I would like to see when we went to bring up to the sub where we met these young people.
Yeah.
There's about 20 of them turned up, and it would be nice if we could invite them to Cabinet when we do the report there.
I'm sure you can arrange that with Michelle. Yeah, lovely. Okay, right. Moving on to item 7, which is the Children and Young People's Rights Scheme Progress Report 21 to 23. 2 years. God, we missed a year, didn't we? Hayley Gwilliam is the lead Cabinet member. We've also got Dave Howes here, Director of Social Services, Jane Whitmore and Julie Gosney. I know Alison Anthony is online. I know Louise Gibbard is here. Is Robert Smith here as well? Apologies from Robert Smith. This is a regular committee item since the report was adopted in 2014. So basically we're just asking questions, looking at the issue. So who's going to lead on this? Hayley, you're going to introduce this, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is my first time speaking on this report. I've inherited children's rights from former Cabinet member, but just if I may, United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, I'm sure many of us around the room and online know about that. but it sets out the rights of child and lays the foundation as to why we are here today with this 5th update in relation to how children's rights scheme is being embedded and considered in all our work across the authority. There is a statutory duty and expectation for us to provide this on an annual basis. Our participation and involvement team have been working incredibly hard with champions across the directorates to embed children's rights across the authority. The Children's Rights Scheme was co-designed with young people, for young people. It was designed, as I said, with the children, their families, members of the public, Children's Rights Network and council members. And you will see the incredible detail that's gone into the report. It's set out under the 5 key principles: participation, empowerment, embedding, accountability and non-discrimination, all of which are threaded through the work of Swansea Council as an authority. I think it's important to take time to reflect and remember that whilst it's important for us to consider our reach and numbers, this work has to be done in a meaningful way, and this has to reflect the lives of our children and young people. So it's really important to bring to life some of the work that the authority does. I know very recently myself and my colleague, Councillor Louise Gibbard, have both attended Child and Family Service Staff Days and have been able to see how our social care staff really capture the voices of our young people, the young people that they're working with, promoting choice and control wherever possible. And whilst the nature of that work of social services department has to remain confidential for safeguarding purposes, we cannot talk about individual cases. I can say wholeheartedly that our staff are empowering young people to participate and to make sense of their own situations, making decisions in safe spaces. It really promotes a sense of choice and control over their lives. Other examples which are contained within the report evidence the consideration given to the rights and the inclusion of young people in the decisions that affect them. There are other examples, obviously, I could touch on, but I think it's more important that I hand over to the team, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm just going to give an introduction because you're absolutely right, Chair. It's 2021 we were here last time, and it was about refreshing the scheme and giving a framework from which we can report on, which is this is the very first time we've done the report in this way. It's been a real challenge because there is so much to actually fit into those 5 headings around the human rights principles. And of course, it does align with our human rights work as a council as well. So there is, there's a connection between the two. So whilst the report covers all of the activity and demonstrates the things that we've done under each of those headings, and Julie will talk about some of the really specific examples in a second, it also kind of covers what you would have heard from us last time we attended back in 2021 about what the children and young people had said which was important to them in terms of their priorities. So we will, to accompany this report when it goes on to full council, do you said we did to cover off those 6 priorities, but they are explicit within the report, and you can pull them out that way. There's also, I think we probably have discovered there's more stuff that we could put in as well, but we didn't know how do we do that in a meaningful way rather than just to flood it with loads and loads of stuff. But as a whole council report, I think that embedding the rights of the child in our everyday business as usual is becoming really apparent. I'll pass over to Julie to give you some examples, and then if I can come back just on the recommendations, because I just want to draw attention to some of them, if that's all right, Chair.
Okay, Julie.
Thank you. The examples I'm going to give are sort of throughout the report. Like Jane said, it became a bit of a mammoth report, really, and I think that's sort of kudos to the work across the whole council. The more we embed, the more practice there is to share with you all. So just looking at a couple of them, annually, as many of you will know, we do Universal Children's Day, 20th of November. We are again acknowledging it on Monday next week, where we really sort of look at the priorities that children and young people are raising, address where we've made progress across the council, and look at sort of what else matters to them, sort of what are the emerging issues, who are the partners that we are working with, and how do we sort of better connect in all of our settings, whether that be school or within community. Some of the other work that we've noted in the report is around the work we did on votes at 16. So with the law change there, we commissioned Swansea MAD. With ourselves as a team, we went into secondary schools, all secondary schools, promoting this change in law, supporting young people to register to vote. But not only that, working with young people who became ambassadors to votes at 16 so that they could sort of peer educate within their schools on a more ongoing basis. That work didn't stop there, and more recently we've worked with Swansea MAD to progress the democracy grant, looking at how we sort of carry on that work now, not just with children and people, but with across the ages, looking at sort of voter ID cards and so forth. On top of some of this work, there are very specific youth committees and groups that make up some of the work under participation, such as the Junior Safeguarding Board. For 22-23, their priority was around raising awareness and champion LGBTQ+. More recently, their priority for 23-24 is around sexual harassment. Now, with some of those priorities addressed, there's already been a huge amount of work that's gone on, namely around White Ribbon Day, some of our Plan UK work, which was about addressing discrimination, safety of women and girls, looking at sessions specifically with our teenage boys, and exploring masculinity, whether that be positive or toxic, and then unraveling some of that and looking at sort of what are those influences within society. So very specific niche pieces of work that address many of the priorities raised by young people. One of the projects also I thought I'd just raise is, again, within Child and Family Services, Lost Voices. So working again with specific groups of young people, whether they be looked after, homeless and so forth, and exploring those what matters conversations. On top of that, there's also a huge amount of work that takes place within the commissioning team around our play sufficiency, childcare sufficiency, and the improvement of our play areas. All of this, I think you will agree, sort of paints quite a hefty picture, really, of the sort of day-to-day work that goes on around participation. If it's okay just to move on to empowerment, again, a huge amount of work goes on within schools with our team and with other colleagues around rights in the school. Many of you be aware that previously we've promoted rights respect in schools. Now, more recently, this is rights within the curriculum and pushing the resources that have been developed by the Children's Commissioner for Wales and supporting those sessions to continue to be run in our school settings. Hayley also has mentioned the councillor chambers visits and meet a councillor, which were hugely successful. Children and people have been involved in our human rights city work, settings, sort of the ways of working really within Evolve on our youth settings via youth committees. Within groups such as sports and health and cultural services, developing sessions like Us Girls, libraries running empathy labs where they're working with children and people in schools to upskill and support young people to express themselves so that we address some of those quiet voices. When we look at embedding, I think many of you will be aware that children's rights is now quite explicit within our IIA. So whenever there's a change in our service delivery or strategies, people are requested to think about children's rights, how that provision or service is going to impact children and people, and look at where they can ensure that children are involved as stakeholders in that development going forward. As Jane's already addressed, I won't go into it in huge detail, but we have adopted the Right Way principled approach, which not only sits within our children and young people's work, it's a national model, it's used by Welsh Government and the Children's Commissioner for Wales, and also then filters through into our wider human rights cities work. So making sure that there's a consistent framework that across the council is a common language and that we're all addressing and is the same regardless of what age you're working with. Again, just picking on one particular thing, rights training specifically for early years practitioners. So making sure that our training, embedding, upskilling knowledge around the UNCRC starts at sort of a very, very young age. In terms of accountability and that whole council approach, More recently, we've established a cross-directorate working group so that we can make sure that those that are facilitating a lot of this participation work and the embedding of children's rights all come together to not only scrutinise how we are doing against the principles of the scheme, but also look at joining up the local, regional and national opportunities and how we communicate that out to children and young people. We also then sit on the Human Rights Steering Group, making sure that the work around the Children's Rights Scheme is filtered and sits clearly within the action plan of the Human Rights Steering Group. I've just put a few other examples here as well. So children's rights embedded in within recent coast funding opportunities, making sure that we're meeting some of the needs of children's rights, but also the priorities that are being addressed, and making sure that children's rights is embedded within our procurement and commissioning processes. So lastly, discrimination, again, it's all within the report, but some of the pieces of work that we've been doing is around, again, Quiet Voices, doing some very specific work with Pen y Bryn, Gower College, around what it means to children and young people in terms of their free time. So outside of that school setting, being able to engage and have their voice heard in a community setting with their peers, and looking at some of those activities that maybe wouldn't ordinarily have been provided previously. So thinking outside of the box, really. Lots again of work that's gone on around supporting our LGBTQ plus community, and some nice pieces of intergenerational work which explored homophobic language and those commonalities across the ages of things that people were experiencing, how that collective voice and that sharing opportunity was helping people to address some of these issues. And I think that's it, Jane, is that for me? Yeah.
You come back in, Jane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Jill. You can see it's such a broad report and there's so much detail. It says how you pitch it and where you get it and how do you get it in a format that kind of highlights all of those really good, those great pieces of work that's going on across the council. The bit that I wanted just to draw your attention to is, so right on the end of there's a set of recommendations for us to take forward to, you know, over the next few years in terms of how we strengthen each one of the 5 principles as we go forward. But one of our thinking is around following the Welsh Government's model of reviewing children's rights schemes, which is based on a 5-year cycle with a progress report midway through the cycle. So it would mean a change of us coming back sort of every 2 years, kind of a little bit like we've done since 2021 to now. But just wanted to take the committee's view on that and how do they feel about that. But it does align with the sort of model of reviewing that Welsh Government's doing and the framework that we're utilising. But you can see the set of recommendations that are there. And I know, Chair, I think there's some specific questions, but I'll pause there if you could, and then go into the detail if you want. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I've got a first question. I know that Julie just referred to the IIA, the Integrated Impact Assessment, but how successful are we in embedding the whole council approach on children's rights in particular? I mean, apart from, you know, ticking a box on these reports, and do we have arrangements to benchmark and measure, monitor performance?
I think, Chair, it's fair to say that when we decided to sort of shape the children's rights scheme around the 5 principled approach, knowing that it was a national model, already came with a matrix. I think that matrix is provided in the We Well section of is like a 1-page plan that we produced, which is now being used by the Children's Commissioner and Welsh Government as best practice. It, I think, has enabled, and the amount of information we had contributed by various departments for this report was quite overwhelming. But I think it showed really that use of that simple common language in a way that all departments were able to identify with made it easier for people to find where their fit was. So I think that as a matrix is definitely, we're seeing huge benefit in it. I think also the fact that we're going to be taking the same tact with the Human Rights City Action Plan, shaping it around the 5 principles, will neatly enable all council directorates to see the follow-on from children and people to, you know, through all the ages. And I think within the IIA, you know, whereas when we first did it, I think we were sort of seeing Lots of people question what is children's rights? How do we know what article we're impacting? How do we reach children and young people? Those are not now the questions that we're now seeing. We're now seeing, is this enough? Would you suggest we go elsewhere? And already children and people have been seen as stakeholders prior, sort of in advance of the development taking place. So I think we've seen a huge shift. I don't know if that answers your question, sorry.
Yeah, it does. I mean, just turn it on its head a bit. Are you aware of any weaknesses in the councils where we're not addressing this properly, or where we still need to do corrective action? Go on, be honest now.
I think there's always room for us to improve, and no matter what we're doing, it's just understanding. I mean, training, I guess, would be one, and how we embed it into things that we have to do, so it becomes part of business as usual. I think there's always more that we can do, but I guess there's always more that we can capture, because I do think there's an awful lot that goes on that we're not quite as joined up as capturing. If I'm totally honest, was when I look at it and think, oh, what about this? What about that? I know we've had conversations across the council with actually, oh, that could fit in, that couldn't fit in. So I think it's about how we utilize our efforts to capture what's going on and bring it into one framework and feed it into it, rather than try and do more or do something on top of it. And I think that what will help, and I know that we've got a link from Welsh Government around the framework, because they've only just done it in this way as well. So in terms of benchmarking and understanding what that looks like going forward, that will be interesting. But I don't think we know that as yet, because it is kind of all very, very new, but it will give us that kind of measurement for the future. I agree with Julie in terms of when we first put it into the integrated impact assessments, we've constantly been asked questions, whereas that doesn't seem to be, it just becomes as so people know, and then they consider it that way. So I think that in terms of a measure of success, that's probably
it is work in progress though.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. This brings me nicely on to my question in regards to training. With regard to the work undertaken with empowerment, the report shows that within Education Directorate of the UNCHR, training to schools is targeted and provided to teachers around the rights of children and young people, and several quality checks are in place which provide assurance that schools are promoting the UNCHR and the rights of the child. I picked up going through the report, going through it and reading it on page 76 of the agenda pack, page 17 of the report, paragraph 3, in regards to about the possibility of including school governors when you relate to training. Do you think that this could have been possibly a missed opportunity? Because, as you know, it's important that everybody is classed as a family within the school, and what goes on within the school. Plus, we could have arranged that. Plus, the schools could have used an inset date so they could promote the rights of the child, so that everybody within that establishment is fully aware of what the council are hoping to achieve. And finally, my second point is, I did ask in 2021 if all schools were signed up to the rights respecting schools. Can you just clarify, are all schools now right respecting? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. Jane.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor White. Keep me on my toes. Okay, so had conversations obviously with our education colleagues around that question, just so making sure that we cover everything off. And yes, of course, in terms of governors, it's really essential in terms of children's rights training. So education currently are reviewing the governor trainer offer, and they'll put in the UNCRC as part of that future offer as a priority within their mandatory training, and then obviously they have to do mandatory training, and it's how they weave the UNCRC in there as part of the wider offer as they go forward. So yes, we should make sure that it is in that governance training, because otherwise you're right, it would be a missed opportunity. And in terms of the rights respect in school question. So as you'll be well aware that back in 2013 we had a contract agreement with UNICEF that was promoting rights respect in schools, and helping schools to sign up to that agenda. That run for 5 years and come to an end, and has almost been overtaken by the new curriculum. So we initially paid for Swansea schools to be accredited as rights respecting schools via UNICEF, and then the award recognises the school's achievement, putting the rights of the child into practice within and beyond the school, because there's different levels, and a load of our schools actually undertook that training and signed up to it. I guess for when the curriculum for Wales came in, it became a bit of a change of a focus, because that gave a platform or a framework for actually rights to be embedded in the curriculum, rather than having to do something additional, which schools did then have to pay for. So the Wales curriculum's got the 4 purposes at its heart, and they're the starting point for all teaching and learning. And the 4 purposes of the curriculum are that children and young people develop as ambitious, capable learners and ready throughout their lives. So you can see when you see these how they align back to the articles in the UNCRC, so that children are enterprising, creative contributors ready to play a full part and work in life and work, and ethical, informed citizens of Wales and the world, healthy, confident individuals ready to lead fulfilling lives as valid members of society. So all of those, you can align them back in terms of the rights that are in the UNCRC in terms of each of the articles. So the 4 purposes are described through key characteristics, contributing to the development of ethically informed citizens who understand and exercise their human and democratic rights and responsibilities. So that kind of fits into the framework that we were talking around about the 5 principles there. So, and then as a result, schools will be embedding human rights-based education in a rights-based approach into their school level curriculum, rather than just having to sign up to a rights respect in school award. But schools can still choose to sign up to rights respect in schools award, but that's at their own choice as a governing body and as a school, because there is an additional cost to that. So back in 5-6 years ago, when we finished that award, I think everyone was on a journey or signed up to it. As in terms of where they are now, I think they've used that as a baseline to sort of as a springboard into the new curriculum for Wales. I hope that's all right, Chair. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, lovely. My next question, well, the only other one I've got, as you saw from previously, we looked at the antisocial behaviour scrutiny inquiry. They flagged up particular issues with youth provision in Swansea, including funding and difficulty in recruiting qualified youth workers. I'm just wondering, how is that impacting on the council's work with young people? Who's going to answer that?
So I'll start, and then I'll pass to Councillor Gwilym if that's okay. So I think in terms of impacting on the right, how we embed the rights of children and young people, I don't think it's impacting at all, because as you see through the report and through the ASB scrutiny inquiry, that the voices of young people are really explicit in all of our work and what we do and how we can. So we have youth panels who then are involved in informing and designing what the youth provision would look like. I think it's fair to say that youth provision, static youth provision, isn't something that young people look for anymore. And they've been really, the young people in the communities have been really involved in understanding what that would look like. So I don't think that has had an impact on children's rights. And I think that in terms of recruiting youth workers, we have a rolling advert. We're constantly trying to recruit. I think it is probably a situation with recruitment in general terms. It's not just about youth workers. It's recruitment is difficult, but always that understanding that rolling programme in terms of youth workers coming and working, and what does that outreach model look like across all of Swansea, and how we can stretch the resources we have and actually tap into additional resources. And our external partners, our third sector partners, that are all out there doing this work. It's not just on the council to do it. And there's lots and lots of different community groups that are out there that we can bring in there to actually help us address the gap. I'll pass over to Hayley, if that's okay.
Yeah, Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo exactly what Jane had just said, and children were very much involved in the redesign of our youth provision, and where we had the static provision, which might have been reaching the same cohort of young people. The outreach model actually reaches 4 times the amount of young people. Young people were saying that they wanted to be reached in their communities, in their spaces where they hang out with their friends. So I think that whilst there may be the desire from the same young people to have that static provision, a lot of other children who weren't accessing that are now being reached through that blended model approach.
Okay, no doubt we'll look at that in some more detail when we come to scrutinise that particular issue, but that's very helpful. Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions on this report at all? No? Okay. You asked us whether we were happy to do this every 2 years. I mean, personally, I am. Do members have any objections to that? No? Okay, that from our perspective, obviously it's up to the cabinet member, but from our perspective, we're happy with that, and deal with that in that sense. Gives you more time to get things moving along. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Right, next on item 8, which is the annual report on corporate safeguarding for 22-23. Welcome Councillor Louise Gibbard, the Cabinet Member for Care Services, and we've got Dave Howes, Director of Social Services, and Simon Jones from the Social Services Strategy and Performance Improvement Officer. Louise, you're going to introduce this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm really pleased to come back to you again this year to present this year's Corporate Safeguarding Annual Report. My thanks to Simon Jones as report author and to Dave Howes as lead officer and chairing the Corporate Safeguarding Group. And obviously, thank you to all the members of the group and in fact to all council staff, because their ongoing commitment to safeguarding, which is of course everybody's business. It's a very detailed and thorough report, which I hope you'll agree shows that we're making good progress. That we've got robust arrangements, clear lines of responsibility and accountability, and clear processes to report and act on any concerns. We've updated our corporate safeguarding policy, incorporating the All Wales procedures and our own Swansea model. With named, I can't read my own writing, what I've written here. I'm not sure what that word says, but anyway, named safeguarding officers in all service areas and key learning shared and overseen by the corporate safeguarding group. Our arrangements are based around the 7 key areas of safe governance and performance: safe employment, safe workforce, safe practice, safe partnerships, and safe voice. I won't go through all of those in detail, but just to pick out some examples of good practice highlighted in each. In terms of safe governance, Scrutiny obviously plays a really key role for both this committee and the 2 performance panels. So grateful to all the councillors on Scrutiny for bringing us, holding us to account and asking questions about safeguarding in that way. In safe employment, work is ongoing around revised HR policies and incorporating safeguarding into our council-wide volunteering policy. That's been through the Social Care and Tackling Poverty STC, which I know there's members of on this committee. With Safe Workforce, the report gives them a really nice example of how messages are being communicated to all our teams. For example, in waste, park and cleansing, where a lot of the staff might not be at a desk and looking at the intranet. We've got some good examples there of how those messages are getting out. And the training programme, which is being updated and rolled out, obviously incredibly important on that thread. Safe Practice incorporates our work to become a human rights city and children's rights, as we've just been talking about today. I wanted to highlight again as well our work of our CMET team, contextual housing, contextual missing, exploited, sorry, my writing is terrible, exploited and trafficked, who have won national praise and more importantly funding recently for this innovative approach and to expand that. Safe Partnerships is centred all around our communities and other organisations that we work with. And finally, Safe Voice, which is all about placing the individual at the heart of our process. Again, the officers have already mentioned our Junior Safeguarding Board, for example, which is an opportunity for children and young people to have their say about the safeguarding issues which matter to them, and have been recently leading work on LGBTQ awareness. Advocacy is a really important part of this and our offer. for children and adults continues. And I know we've had some discussions about that in the scrutiny panels recently. And so I'll leave that there. I'll hand over to Simon and Dave if they want to pick anything in particular out that I've missed, and look forward to questions, which I'm sure the officers will answer adeptly.
Simon, Dave, I'm sure she hasn't missed anything. Do you have anything like that? Not at all. Not at all. Okay. Okay. Right. Well, I've got a couple of questions then. Obviously, these are follow up from previous scrutiny sessions, and I think we're just trying to keep on top of it really. Obviously, acknowledge the focus and work on working with contractors and suppliers, which we previously worked, and you've actually done a lot of work on that. To be fair, could you comment on the level of compliance arrangements for monitoring to ensure contractors and suppliers do understand their responsibilities and duties in relation to safeguarding? Dave, thanks.
Yes, still a work in progress, Chair. There's a piece of work underway at the moment where we're going back to those contracting and monitoring officers across the council to look for those examples of when you are reviewing performance under the contract, how are you holding contracted organisations to account for the measures that they would have had to describe they were intending to put in place when they led the or when they were awarded the contract in the first place. At the moment, and as was probably reflected last year, we've still got better evidence in the more obvious areas of practice. So our commissioned arrangements around care home provision or domiciliary care, or some of the things that are led within business where safeguarding has always been at the forefront of our thinking and responsibilities. So we know we've got that evidence. It's still more challenging to find, whilst we know the contract expectations are in place, whilst we know that organisations tendering for those contracts are specifying the actions they intend to take to be compliant with those contracting expectations. What we're still struggling with is how do you get the evidence back for us to then be able to say, as a council, can we provide that extra assurance? So probably, given that features within our work plan of the safeguarding board this year, it's probably worth us bringing something specific back on that item in advance of next year's annual report, just to give some in-year insurance, and we can work out afterwards whether that's direct to this committee or to one of the performance subgroups. But we'll take that as an action to come back with that additional assurance.
Okay, that's very good. I'd be surprised if you didn't say it was work in progress, because we must have hundreds, maybe thousands of contracts in this authority, which there's still, I think, very important that we do try to do that. My other question is relating to mandatory safeguarding training. I'm just wondering how that's being promoted across the authority, and is the new Oracle system now providing us with better management information and more effective oversight of training compliance across the council?
So thanks, Chair. We've just launched the revised training. So all of us, both officers and members, should have had communication in the last month or so. So if you're looking at me puzzled, then we need to do something more about promoting it amongst. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. You coming, Cabinet members. So that's live at the moment. What we've purposefully done, knowing that we needed to update the training, was to hold on expectations post Oracle Fusion implementation, get the new training ready, and then push now and for the rest of this financial year to try and hit our target of everybody who's working within this organisation or is elected member for the council, to get that training completed by the end of this year. And yes, the Oracle Fusion system now allows us to have management reports that will be able to demonstrate that level of compliance or not. So I have undertaken the training. I scored about 80% on the test at the end of it, which is good. That was
only
a bare pass. Yeah, I've decided that I'm too nuanced in my responses, and the computer says no. Simon, on the other hand, tells me he scored 100%. But it works. it's very good updated training, and yes, we've got the mechanisms now for reporting on that. So we hope to come back. Well, it should be capable of being reported by the regular corporate reporting now levels of compliance, so we'll get earlier assurance than the non-assurance that we've had in the past, as you've well challenged. So, and I'll leave it to the cabinet members to update on where we're at.
Yeah,
I'm told we're to expect an email, but I don't recall receiving one.
well, on council regarding councillors training, I asked Hugh Evans about this on Monday because I thought I better get asked about this. So he has asked, Sarah Lackenby's team are going to do a sort of step by step for councillors how to make sure we all know how to access Oracle Fusion and how we can do it from there. So that's forthcoming. And when Dave says we got to the end of the year, that's till end April, isn't it? Not like December.
Yeah,
so,
I understood that.
yeah, so hopefully that will be coming in the next week or so, and everyone will.
So we are to expect an email as councillors saying,
Indeed,
please do
indeed.
this
You might
training.
have picked it up already in terms of the staff news and things like that,
Yeah.
but we're getting a specific instruction to help us because we don't use Oracle Fusion as much as others.
No, we don't know. We're not all as IT literate either. So, yeah, sorry, Hayley.
No, I can vouch. I'm not IT literate as such, but I have completed the training when I had COVID, and I know I had a lot of time on my hands, and it's quite simple to navigate. I will vouch for that.
I won't ask your score, Hayley. Right, Francesca. 100%, of course, yeah. Francesca.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is with regards to mandatory training. I know that we have a host of stuff that we have to do as councillors, which some of us did last year. And I know I raised this question at another meeting, not in scrutiny, but I'm still amazed that as councillors we don't do a DBS. Because I appreciate some councillors may have a DBS for other voluntary work or if they sit on a school governors, but we do as councillors within our role within the community do come into contact with children and vulnerable people, and I'm just amazed we haven't incorporated that into the mandatory training yet. Just wondering if there's any I haven't seen anything, perhaps there is something in the pipeline, but I'd just be interested to know if that is something the council has considered. I appreciate it would be an extra cost, but I think it should form part of safeguarding.
I'm not sure all schools require governors to have DBSs either. I mean, I have one through Pentra Havard, but I think, you know, and most councils are governors. So, you know, maybe we should look at that, Dave.
It has been looked at, not just for elected members, but also for probably a range of staff across public services, not just within the council, who traditionally we would have expected to have a DBS check. The issue for the council is that the guidance, the national guidance around expectations of who is eligible for a check has changed over time. And, you know, just as you've described, some of the people that we think on a common sense basis, it looks like that's a role that we would, you know, and certainly would traditionally have expected a DBS check, fall outside of that regulation and guidance now. And the council's position is a position of we will apply, you know, we'll apply and comply with the guidance. On a couple of occasions, we've gone back and said, should we go beyond that? Should we take a position to go beyond that? But that, in terms of resources, both the financial resources and the practical resources of the implications of that, to date we haven't felt able to do that. But I'm happy to consider it again as in the Corporate Safeguarding Board. But my instinct is probably we'll still reach a position where we say, well, we can only go to a point where we're compliant with the national guidance around this.
When you say national guidance, you mean Welsh national or UK?
Welsh national, yeah.
Okay, so talk to your MS. Okay, and are you okay with that, Francesca? Yeah. Anybody else got any questions?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, anybody else got any questions on this report at all? I think it might be worth just noting that for an update once you've had a chance to look at it, Dave. And know that maybe next time you bring the report back, you can sort of just highlight what your conclusions are on that.
Yeah, will do, Chair.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. It's very helpful, very useful. We shall we'll come back and obviously I would guess that in terms of the the issue you're going to bring back to us, which was the compliance. Maybe adult services is panel, maybe the most appropriate place initially.
That probably makes sense, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everybody. No, you carry on. Right. The next item is the bus services review. However, we did say to the officers they can join us at 5 o'clock. Are they all here? So we're waiting for one. So what I'm going to do is with the committee's permission, is just move to the next agenda item and then come back to this one, so all the officers are able to get here. It's our fault. So I wonder, is Chris here? Do you want to introduce your scrutiny performance panel progress report, Chris? Chris Holly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Since the last time, we've carried on the usual format. The format is every quarter we look at the finance quarterly reports, both of revenue and capital. We also look at the performance monitoring every quarter as well. Performance monitoring is quite difficult because of some of the changes in the indices for performance monitoring has taken place, and of course we've missed a year exactly with the performance because of COVID. So what we have is a history of the last 18 months or so, and then what happened before COVID. Been quite difficult to, and fair play to the department under Richard Rowlands. He's done a very good job of trying to get them to link up and to make sense of the measurements in each one. On the finance, obviously we've been through a difficult time, and I think we are going to have a more difficult time with the budgets that are coming up. We've had the quarterly reports, and the last one we had today was the first quarter of the last of the budget, and obviously we have overspends of 13 million, and we have underspend of about 14 million on the capital, but that's to be expected in the first quarter, and that will change, I think, as we go on. We also today had regeneration on our panel. As many members know, we took over regeneration about last June, and since then we have a brief outline on what's happening in the regeneration field, and then every 2 months we pick out one individual scheme and ask for a far more detailed report on that. And that's what we had today. We had a part of the meeting was in the public domain and part in the private domain because of financial issues and legal contractual issues with both Skyline and with the Copper Bay developments. So all in all, it has been incredibly busy. We have other reports that are coming up shortly. We have waste management, we have commercialisation. We're going to have a further report on the way in which commercialisation has actually embedded in the council, one which I'm afraid, as an organisation, much of the council is not a commercial operation and needs to look at if it wants to go down that road, and it appears that we are going to be doing more of that. So we need to get far more meaner and leaner in the way in which we charge and how we collect money. On top of that, we have the planning annual planning report. We can't actually scrutinise the planners, but we can scrutinise the planning report. And the planning report, it tells us how the planning department is working, what its percentages of on time within the 6 weeks, and also about enforcement, which we know has been a problem for many years. I'll leave it at that unless anybody's got any questions, Chair.
Has anybody got any issues they want to raise to Chris at all, or questions on the committee, on the work of the panel? No? Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks very much for that. It's very
Okay.
helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we'll go back now to item 5 as all the players are now here, even though we're a bit earlier than we thought we'd be. So the next item is the Scrutiny Working Group on Bus Services, and we've got Councillor Andrew Stevens online, Mark Wade, Director of Place, Stuart Davis, Head of Highways and Transportation, and Barry Gilbert, Team Leader on Public and School Transport. And I think we've got Ben Fowles as well, Director of South Wales Transport, which is very helpful. As well, so that's great. As you know, this is a standalone topic with the working groups of one-off scrutiny sessions, and we've had a number of come back to this a number of times. So obviously, we're very concerned at the moment of where we're at. So, Andrew, do you want to introduce the report at all? Do you want to comment at all on where we're at on terms of bus services?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I won't go into the report in detail. I just want to thank Barry for pulling the report together, and for him and the transport team for the work they do on a day-to-day basis. I think the report covers the main points in terms of what is being looked at with cleaner fuel buses, with Welsh Government exploring the possibility of using hydrogen fuel buses on some routes, and that we're working with Transport for Wales, TfW, and other local authorities to see if a pilot scheme can be done in the Swansea Bay area. Regarding the bus network services network and the COVID-funded bus emergency scheme, with Welsh Government planning to change the way bus services are provided from a deregulated model to a franchise model. There's integrated bus and rail links, and that we're working to create a transport hub in Gowerton where bus and rail services can connect better, which has actually already led to some improvements, such as new bus stops near the railway station and the surgery, and also our bus shelter revamp programme that many members here will be aware of, with us changing a number of bus shelters across the city to more comfortable and accessible new shelters. Regarding the switch to the bus transition fund, Chair, it's certainly been a difficult period for Swansea residents as a direct consequence of commercial decisions by certain operators. I know Barry and our transport team have been doing all they can to try and minimise the disruption, but there is only so far we can go at this time. As I did say on Thursday, the shift from the bus emergency scheme to the bus transition fund did see reduced funding for private operators. However, this fund was put in place to safeguard the bus industry during the COVID pandemic, and propping up a private industry couldn't really have been sustained indefinitely. And I think I pointed out on Thursday, Chair, that England lost 10% of their bus services last year, while in Wales this figure was only 2.4%, largely due to Welsh Government's intervention. More people are taking the bus now than during the COVID pandemic, but usage is still down, with the number of people who paying for the buses only about 80% of what it was before COVID. And actually the number of people who use a free pass is actually even lower, which is between about 60 and 75%, depending on the bus route. So I appreciate this is not just a local problem, but a problem across Wales, Chair. So thank you, Chair, and I'll hand over to Barry or if there's anything else to add.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Mr. Fowles, as you're Vice Chair of the Coach and Bus Association company, which represents the interests of smaller bus operators, do you want to give us a brief outline what you think the issues are in terms of bus services? Would that be helpful? Yeah. You press the microphone on as well so they can hear you online. Do you know which one it is? It's the red button in the middle below the microphone. That's it. Excellent.
Right. Yes. I think the main area of concern is a reorganisation coupled with a lower budget. I think anybody that does anything to do with business would understand that to reorganise normally takes additional funding. Coming out of COVID, we have bared our soul, if you like, to the Welsh Government and said, yeah, we have lost an awful lot of people, which was understandable. it's a UK problem, not just a Welsh problem. It's beginning to come back. It's beginning to improve. There are various other reasons for the improvement, and it's quite difficult to come up with a fixed set of why is it happening and how is it happening and how quickly will it recover to pre-COVID levels. Some services have recovered already, one or two in Wales, but in general terms, the figures that have just been announced by the last speaker certainly are true. I think the surprising one is the free passes. The fact that the concessionary pass numbers have not resumed as quickly as was expected. I mean, if you've got a free pass, you would expect it to be used, and you would expect the recovery to be very, very much quicker than the 2.5, 3 years that it's taken. And still, it's only back to 75% of most services at best. The fare-paying passengers, I suppose they've been faced with cuts anyway, natural cuts because of the lack of funding. So we're almost round the circle now. And I think this is where the bus industry finds itself in Wales. It's going for a reorganisation. And I don't think there's a lot of hostility from operators about the fact that the bus industry needed reforming. It wasn't fit for purpose under its previous rules and regulations. However, the transition to franchising will almost certainly depend on how deep the pockets are going to be. Franchising is not a panacea for success, as has been proved in certain places in the UK. It is working in other places, but it is costing an awful lot of money. I was with First Group during the first franchising in London back in the 90s, and London Transport's budget, besides capital spend, when it started first was £1 million a year. It's now £1 million a day, and that in 20 odd years. So it will develop. The costs will develop. But there again, I would think that Transport for London will point to a successful model. And I believe that Welsh Government are aiming to be driving their franchising model along the same lines as the London Transport model. So hopefully they will have a budget that will sustain it. And sustainability, once you have got to franchising, is the most important thing. I noticed recently the Mayor of London has cut the budget to London Transport after 20 odd years of expansion of that budget. It now seems as if it's peaked, and it's now very much a bit of a hot potato recently, in that it is now cutting back slightly. Hopefully the model that the Welsh Government adopt will take care of some of the problems, and we'll learn from the Transport for London model, and hopefully we'll be able to sustain. But it will take an awful lot of time. It will take an awful lot of good management by Welsh Government and their agents, Transport for Wales. And at this moment in time, I don't see that management there, but hopefully I'll be proven wrong. One of the main concerns from the SME group is that the Transport for London model started off with something like about 18 operators way back when it started first, and a lot of those were small and medium-sized enterprises. They've all gone now, and has left Transport for London with about 6 operators and no more. And that in itself leads to an expansion in budget, or a necessary expansion in budget.
There's a similar system in Manchester. Is that? Are you familiar with that one?
Yep, the Manchester model we've been watching quite closely over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. Andy Burnham's intent on driving it through. I think in the huge conurbations where transport isn't as variable as it is in Wales, and even in the cities and towns of Wales, I think it's easier to adopt a large franchising model, which one size fits all basically, and I think you can get away with that in the large conurbations. Wales tends to be made up of a lot of smaller conurbations with their own individual success levels, if you like, and that in itself will form a challenge to Welsh government in their drive towards franchising. My big hope is that they do remember the small and medium-sized enterprises, because that is where an awful lot of the quality and better operation is. And to lose that would probably be a tragedy.
Okay, thank you for that. Barry, do you want to add anything at all?
There's nothing I need to add to that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, questions then. Just in terms, I start off because obviously the report, which when we initially looked at this, was looking at fostering effective dialogue between the council and First Cymru, as well as other bus operators, and it's very welcome having South Wales Transport represented here. I'm just wondering what progress has been made in trying to get that dialogue underway. Is any, Barry, do you want to? Yeah.
What we do as council officers is that we have ongoing dialogue with the bus operators as we see necessary, as routes have to be tweaked accordingly or improvements made, etc., etc. There have been quite major changes in the senior management structure of the major operator in the area in the last 14 months, but we've managed to maintain a good dialogue with the transition management, and we'll continue to have that. We've actually got in place a quality partnership agreement with the major operator, and then we do meet on a regular basis to go through specific issues on each occasion, and it's very open dialogue, for example. So we intend to maintain that dialogue with the company and also with our smaller operators as the needs arise.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Barry pretty much covered it, to be honest. You know, there has been a number of changes, in particular in First Cymru over recent years. I wouldn't say that hasn't hindered things. I mean, they're our main bus operator, and the churn of roles in any organisation can actually cause difficulties. But despite this, you know, Barry and the team and myself via the Partnership Quality Board and some of our councillor champions for transport sit on that, have tried to maintain a close working relationship and trying to get that consistent and constructive dialogue and keep it going.
As I understand it, if you make any changes to any bus service, you have to get the Transport Commissioner for Wales approval for that. And I understood there's a 6-week notice period to that. Do we actually get consulted at the beginning of that 6-week period, or is it just presented to us as a fait accompli?
The notice period is 56 days
56
in effect. Operators can go off and do their own thing if they so wish, but most operators will talk to us in advance, and it's just to give us the gypsies warning on something. In case there's anything that's going to come down the line to the council that we'll have to pick up the tab on. But we maintain a very good dialogue with our operators, but there isn't a need for a formal consultation process in Wales, unfortunately.
There is a need, you say?
There isn't.
There isn't.
There isn't, no. An operator could just cancel a bus service if they wanted to, just giving the normal 56 days notice if they so wish, to not talk to anyone about it.
It's 56 days, 8 weeks, isn't it? So I think, yeah, that's right. Yeah. A bit longer than I thought it was, but yeah. Okay.
I think, Chair, with respect, that does hamper matters for Welsh Government as they progress their drive towards a reorganisation, because 8 weeks is not a lot of time. And if an operator, big or small, does decide to give 8 weeks notice, they've done nothing wrong. But that means then that either the local authority, Transport for Wales, or Welsh Government have got to try and pick up those services as quickly as they can. And if that's a big operator, then that's got to be a big fear for and a big challenge for Welsh Government and local authorities.
And presumably, if the Welsh Government bring in franchising operations, that's going to be subject to the same rules as well. unless they change the law.
They would, yeah. Well, I think that's part and parcel of the franchising program is that they will change the competition law and they will change the rules. And to be quite frank with you, I don't think there'd be much objection from any operators, large or small, on that.
Yeah, because I understand that the 1985 Act prevents you from cross-subsidising services as well.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, which is a real pain. Yeah. Okay. Right, Mike White, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the cabinet member just touched on what I was going to ask, really, in regards to what do you see as the main barriers to effective engagement? I worked on this this scrutiny bus services committee, and as I say, what my concern is that there seems to be a high turnover in senior management leadership of the main bus operator in Swansea. Do you think that this has hindered progress?
I used to be managing director of several of the first group companies up until year 2000, 2001, finishing up as managing director of Bristol. So I do have a little inside knowledge. I don't think a lot's changed in the 20 years since I left. Larger groups obviously move much slower than smaller companies. If we have a problem, then we discuss it with the local authority immediately. It'll be a problem that between us we will probably resolve very quickly. Larger companies with their groups and their divisions, etc., are very, very much slower and far more difficult to talk to and to get progress and quicker results, which is why the 8 weeks notice that has to be given probably isn't enough in Wales.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, you okay with that, Mike?
Yeah, as they say, that was a concern that I felt could be difficult to sort of handle with the different the company directors changing over frequently.
Yeah, certainly as a councillor, if you have an issue with a bus service in your own ward, particularly First Cymru, you might go to the managing director one day and then next time it happens, there's somebody else there to talk to. So it's very difficult to build up relationships with them. So
and very often he's got to go somewhere else anyway with the problem.
Yeah,
up to a different level.
So. Yeah. Okay. Right, Sue Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered what dialogue had happened between the council and the service provider with the recent cuts and if the council had any influence on those cuts.
Okay.
Because they're affecting every community.
Okay, Barry?
Thank you, Chair. The cutbacks that were made to the bus services by First Cymru, they were actually commercially operated services rather than services operating under contract to the council. So whilst we had numerous discussions with First Cymru, mostly from a funding perspective, we did in fact have a little bit of influence in terms of making sure that at least every community still had a basic bus service as a result of the proposals.
Okay, Sue?
Thank you. Yeah, it's fine, but when you look at the usage of the buses and the people that have got the passes, the free passes, why are they not using the buses? Because they're not very convenient. Just a comment.
Yeah. Yeah, if it is the case, if you've got free bus service, you do need to have the bus there to use, don't you? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple more questions. When this scrutiny working group looked at this, there was a couple of sort of aspirational recommendations, so which I'm not expecting much progress on, but I'm going to ask anyway. In terms of joining up bus and rail times to improve coordination between services, and also the cross ticketing. I'm just wondering, have we had a chance to do anything with that, or is it really just more a Welsh government issue which we need to talk to at all?
I think obviously I sit with a lot of Welsh government agencies over the last 2 years as representative of Quebec. Certainly cross-ticketing will be part and parcel of the franchise agreement and the new contracts that will come in accordingly. So the first rollout, I believe, they're going to roll it out in zones apparently, and the first zone rollout will be April 26. they're very, very much on the basis that they own the railway as well. They're very much into connecting and connectivity with road and rail and bus services and rail in particular. And I think that, yes, in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, there will be very, very great improvements in the connectivity between the two modes of transport. It's an awful pity that although the bus carries probably 75% of all public transport journeys, it doesn't get 75% of their money out of the government to assist this, but the rail seem to get the lion's share.
I think I made that point in the council meeting as well. Yeah. In terms of the, I think you got the answer to the question. Do you want to add anything, Barry, at all?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just add that certainly Transport for Wales, in terms of reshaping the bus network in the Greater Swansea area, they are definitely looking at more cross-city services to provide links from the north, south, west and east, which would then bring buses in closer to the railway station.
That'd be very helpful. In terms of cross-ticketing between different bus operators, is that a viable way forward?
We had an agreement with, it's not common in Wales at all. That's the first thing to say. We had a joint operation with First Cymru up until a matter of weeks ago on the Neath to Pontardawe. I know it's not in the Swansea region, but on the Neath to Pontardawe region service, we operated the 256, they operated the 56, but we operated half hour apart. And we accepted their tickets and they accepted ours without any pain. And we both thought that, well, we thought that the service was very, very good. We got a lot of positive feedback from passenger and passenger groups in the area. And then, much to our surprise, it was one of the cuts that First Cymru introduced. They took their 56 off, which means we have one very, very full bus now most of the day. We haven't had time to analyze anything. They didn't tell us they were going to take it off other than putting it on their website, which does tell a story and answer perhaps one of the questions that was asked earlier. It's very difficult when a firm just decides to pull out of something, doesn't tell their partner, and we felt a little bit miffed at that. We thought they might have just dropped us an email or something just to tell us what they were doing, which might have given us time to prepare slightly better for it. But we still honour their tickets on it. We have a travelling arrangement between Neath College students and Gorseinon College students, whereas they predominate with their services in that area, and we predominate in Neath, so we carry each other's students. And to be quite honest, we'll honour their fares and their ticketing and cross-ticketing. When you're talking about contracted services, under the terms of a contracted service, several of which we operate on behalf of CCOS, then we have to take their tickets. We have to honour their tickets. So there's a fair amount of integration of tickets and acceptance of tickets. But I think the question actually is there going to be an all Wales ticket where people can travel around the whole of Wales with their one ticket, one pass, a little bit like an Oyster card from London. And yes, that is the plan as far as Transport for Wales have informed us at the moment.
This is a question for Barry and Andrew Stevens, really. But when I spent a week in Oxford a few years ago, and they've got real-time bus information. They've got, I think, 2 main operators where you have cross-ticketing. And how far away from actually achieving something similar in Swansea?
In terms of RTPI, there's certainly money coming down the line to improve the situation, which would be then led by the ticket machines. In terms of the Swansea area, I was just going to draw an example that prior to COVID, we had an agreement between First Cymru and New Adventure Travel in terms of integration with the Gower network and the Swansea City network. The council acted as the broker, and there was revenue apportionment between the two operators. But it was a voluntary scheme, and unfortunately it fell down because one of the operators felt they weren't getting the revenue that they should have had. And it fell by the wayside then as a result of that. And it's very detrimental to the customer, unfortunately. because you know, a different bus company means a different range of tickets sometimes.
Don't know if you want to add anything, Andrew, before we close this particular issue.
Not necessarily, Chair. I was talking about this not so long ago, actually, with TFW, and I believe they are. I think they're trialing something in North Wales and a smaller area, South East Wales, actually on pay-as-you-go ticketing across multiple operators. But it's very complex system, and but that in order to get it off the ground, which is taking a bit of time, and I think if I recall from what they were saying, is the user has to tap on, tap off bus services, and then it'll work out the most economical fare for what they have to use by the end of the day. So that kind of approach could make things a lot more straightforward and flexible for cross ticket in terms of travel, you know. So.
Okay, I've just been reminded that Councillor Lyndon Jones, who chaired the original working group, is not able to be present because he's got another meeting, but he did want us to ask what's being done to try to get people back onto the buses. Are we as a council doing anything in terms of that, or are we working with bus operators to do that? Barry?
I think the main incentive that we have, Chair, is the free travel initiative, which is now being rolled out again in November, starting this weekend, and then running through then every weekend through to Christmas, and then each weekday between Christmas and New Year. We've run that successfully during the school summer holidays, the Easter periods, etc., etc. Hopefully, the funding will come down the line, and we can continue that as much as we can.
The danger is they use it while it's free, and then they don't come back when you have to pay for it, isn't it?
Indeed so.
I think just to add to what Barry has just said, I think it's a really good initiative, and I think that I did allude to the fact that passengers are beginning to creep back onto the buses, and I think it's initiatives like this, more than just trying to hit a pre-COVID level. I think it's initiatives like this that are actually encouraging these people to come back to the bus. They do try it for free, and then they find out how reasonable it actually is, and then they do stay, or they take more journeys. They might not take all their journeys by bus, but they do take some of their journeys by bus. So I think the carrot of it being free is working and does work. And you know, if we went to gross cost contracts, then effectively the fares could be set at whatever Welsh Government deem is fit. The £2 cap fare in England has certainly brought an awful lot of patronage back to bus services. But we haven't tried anything like that in Wales. And just as a last point there, we were promised when we came out of COVID, and buses were amongst the last things to come out of COVID, you could go to the pub and have a drink, but you couldn't get a bus to get there because they could only carry 7 people at the time. But one of the main issues I think that Welsh Government did promise the bus industry was an advertising campaign to get back on the bus, and that never materialised. And that was promised to the bus industry, it was promised to CPT, it was promised to Quebec, but it never ever materialised.
I think they used all their advertising budget on 20 mile per hour, to be honest. Yeah.
Don't start me on that one.
Has anyone got any other questions at all they want to ask? Oh, Francesca, sorry. Yeah. Where's she gone? Are you there, Francesca?
Hi, sorry, Chair. I've got bad signal, so I've had to turn my camera off. But yeah, on that point, I know somebody mentioned earlier on about the London model, and obviously, you know, over the years, given London's accessibility, that public transport is very popular. But of course, we've got to look at the reasons why that could be popular. Is the fact that also congestion charges were introduced, which you can probably see where I'm going with this. Is that, you know, would Swansea Council look at that? You know, given that Cardiff has already implemented something similar, you know, would that be the reason to increase passenger numbers?
So did you say you want to increase congestion charges in Swansea, Francesca?
I wouldn't, absolutely not. I wouldn't. But what I'm saying is that that's probably one of the reasons contributing to the London model, is that it was introduced, the congestion charge, and you could see the numbers creeping up thereafter. You know, so it'd just be interesting to know if sort of the Transport Department was sort of looking at that if they want to up the numbers on public transport.
Yeah, but that's in the fact it's a complete nightmare to drive in London as well. Andrew, do you want to comment on our intentions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, we're not at this time looking at that. No. So, but it did also come across to me as well, is that you seem to be advocating for us to put congestion charges in the city centre then, or maybe extend the mumbles. I'm not sure.
Absolutely not. No, I wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't be. But no, I mean, the only reason why I mentioned that is more of an observation, as that was probably a contributing factor to the reason why the London model is proven popular, and also its accessibility as well. So just more of an observation, and if it was the council sort of we're ruling it out or engaging in those conversations. Thank you.
Let's get trial mumbles as the pilot, Chair.
It might spin. It might. Okay.
There are parking issues down there.
I think you need to step back a bit, Francesca, now before you dig a hole.
No, not dig the hole, but it is a conversation that has to be had, isn't it? I've been quite open and honest. I wouldn't entertain that idea.
Okay, in my experience, if you talk to Londoners, they actually don't appreciate the public transport they've got there. You know, it's one of the best public transport systems in the world when I go down there, and a lot of them don't appreciate it at all. But there we are. That's the way it is, I'm afraid, isn't it? Any more questions at all? No. Okay, Chris Holly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, London transport is similar to one or two other transports throughout the world that it actually makes money. The reason being there's millions of people moving around regular times throughout the day. So, and you know, that's how it makes money. A congestion charge, I'm not sure that's got much to do with it, but definitely the fact that it's the volume of transport on a regular basis that allows London transport, like it is in Tokyo and like it is in other parts of the world, that it works.
Okay, I think we leave it at that before we talk ourselves into having a congestion charge.
No.
Can I thank everyone for their contribution, particularly Mr. Fowles? It's been very helpful having you in. It's been very interesting as well. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, next item is item 11, membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. You'll see there are no changes proposed. And then item 12, the scrutiny work programme, which is in front of you. You'll know the next meeting, which is going to be on the 19th of December. Everyone should be wearing their Christmas hats, of course, or Christmas jumpers. And we're going to look at the Cabinet Member Portfolio Responsibilities Support for Businesses. So we'll have Councillor Robert Francis Davies here for that. And we're also going to be looking at our annual item of tackling poverty as well. So the leader will be here for that as well. Just to flag up as well, we still have some training programmes coming up on the 4th of December and the 6th of December, scrutiny of performance, and then in January, the 17th and the 23rd of January, in 2 parts, looking at self-assessment of scrutiny. So I would encourage all members to sign up for those training programmes as well, because they've been very, very helpful so far, and I'm sure that would be helpful too. Okay, and then item 13 is the scrutiny letters for information. And item 14, the date and time of upcoming scrutiny panel working group meetings, also for information. So unless any members have any other matters they want to raise, I'm going to declare the meeting closed, and thank you all very much for attending. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye all night.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.